Mr. Thomas P. Zachariah, organizer of NSA, Dr. M. Jaishankar, I heartily welcome you all to the Young Ecologist webinar series session 2. Happy to welcome today's presenters, Ms. Aranya Gayatri, Research Biologist, Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun, Ms. Anukriti Shah, Master Student, Bharatiya Vidyapeeth Institute of Environmental Research, Pune. I gladly welcome all my dear lecturers, NSA committee, and the participants. Welcome all. Our first speaker for today, Ms. Aranya Gayatri, has gained Masters in Wildlife Science in Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun, has worked and enjoyed working in different groups, reptiles and mammals particularly. Also thankful in many ways of organizations that helped her in exploring different parts of India as well. She is currently working in National Dolphin Conservation Project focusing on rivers of Ganga and Brahmaputra. Over to you, ma'am.
Chandana, I believe Aranya is finding it. There's some technical glitch on her side. She'll shortly join. This is information for all the participants also.
Sir, so do we wait?
Yeah, few minutes. It'll get over.
Okay.
Yeah, I just spoke to Aranya. She has got into the wrong link there. I believe it is yesterday's.
Okay.
Aranya, you're back. Are you here?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, you're here. Okay. Aranya, I'll make you the presenter so that you can share your slides. I
Yes,
have
sir.
done that. Okay, you can directly now share your slide and proceed. Chandana has already introduced you. I request Chandana to do it again. Our speaker has just joined. Chandana, over to you.
Yes, sir. Ms. Aranya Gayatri has gained Masters in Wildlife Science from Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun, and also have enjoyed working with different groups, reptiles and mammals particularly. Also, many organizations that helped her exploring in different parts of India as well. She is currently working in National Dolphins Conservation Project, focusing on rivers of Ganga and Brahmaputra. Over to you, ma'am.
Thanks, Chandana. Okay, so the topic of discussion today, continuing from what Raksha spoke to us yesterday. So today we're going to look at threats and measures to protect biodiversity. So is it really the right time to do it? And if we don't do it now, then when are we going to do it? And why do it now? Right? So we are at the crossroads today. So on one side of the coin, we have to protect our farmers who are subsistence farmers. We have to protect the corporate people who are going to offices who need a railway station. We are going to protect those people who are suffering from conflicts. And on the other side of the coin, we love our elephants, we like our tigers, we like our drosophilas. We are really at a crossroad where we have to decide which side to take. Obviously, one side you hammer the coin, the other side you're going to get affected, right? So today I'm going to give you some examples. Of course, I'm going to help that relate to a bit of in Bangalore. So it's a little bit relatable to all of you, and some case studies on what sort of threats do these wildlife face, and how do we really go about in biology. Okay, so this is Shola Forest of the Western Ghats. I'm sure you must be aware there is a Hubli Ankola railway barrier that is going to cut through this. There have been a lot of hue and cry about 2.2 lakh trees getting axed in the Western Ghats. It's obviously immense. But then on the other side, you have the iron ore that is going to get shipped.
RNA, 1 minute. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
Is it
no.
on the slideshow mode? If you can put it on slideshow and move, the other participants, Chandana can tell. We are still with the first slide,
Oh,
the title slide. Yeah.
and I have moved, I think. Is it visible now?
To
Not
me,
yet?
no.
No, no, not yet.
Not yet, not yet.
Better now?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, it
now
is.
we can.
And go to the slideshow mode, Aranya.
I'm already on the slideshow mode.
Is it? But we
Yeah.
can see the sidebar also. This
Okay.
can tell. Okay, Chandana will coordinate. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Now,
No, ma'am, it's not in slideshow mode.
I'm not in the slideshow mode. Okay. Um, no.
No, not yet.
Okay. So, I don't know how else do I do. Can I send it to one of you? Or do we just proceed with this or what to do?
Yeah, I think we'll go ahead. It is visible.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Or you want some guidelines? Even neither I am so tech savvy. It's that slideshow, and there you go for the thing. I'm sure you know that. Is there some? Okay, even if it doesn't happen, I believe it is clear. The slide can be seen. This we'll go ahead.
Okay, so when I move the slides, do you see the slides changing?
Currently, it's in the first slide.
Still, is it?
Yeah.
You can actually put it in the slideshow mode and then start sharing the screen. Maybe
Okay.
then it might work.
Okay. Hmm. Now? Hello?
It's not on the slideshow mode, but we can see the screen.
Oh dear. I don't know what to do. So I'll
Oh,
just.
it's fine, ma'am. You can just continue.
Yeah. So you can see the slides moving or it's still on the first slide?
It's on the second one.
It's on the second. Okay. So, where were we? Okay, so we're looking at Western Ghats and what happened as a threat. Now, instead of looking at like, I'm sure you must be familiar with what sort of threats wildlife go through in sort of fragmentation, poaching, and things like that. But instead of looking at what sort of threats they have, we're going to look at what sort of threats and where are these threats stemming from, or where are they sourcing out from, right? So I'm going to give you some examples and some with Bengaluru. So the first one is about the Bagjan oil issue. So there was a oil drilling happening in Assam, which is very close to the Brahmaputra plains. Now this oil spill had been given an EIA. EIA is an environmental impact assessment. So before they set up an industry, they have to get an EIA clearance, and all that is done, and then they've been set up. But the problem is there was an accident where one of the oil drills actually blew up. Now they were not they were not prepared for the accident, and we lost a dolphin, we lost some of the grass fields that were there. And the picture on the right that you see, the river part, which is the red ones are the oil spills. So the oil spills can be either heavy compounds or light compounds. So when they are heavy compounds, they go down to the sand. When they are light compounds, they flow through the water. Now, it's impossible for us to track back these and restore them once an oil spill has happened. So this is irreversible. Now, when you look at Brahmaputra water, it's very high flowing water. So the light compounds that were there in the oil must have gone to the Bay of Bengal. So where did we fail to actually look at that this threat happened? Because,
Aranya,
yes,
I think it's still in the Hubballi Ankola slide. Chandana, if you can correct me.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
There's some problem.
Balaji is here. Balaji can suggest what could be
Yeah,
done
now
for
the slide has changed.
Okay. I think I'm just going to keep this slideshow off so that you can see. You see the slide moving, changing?
Oh, yeah, now we can see.
Okay. Too many technological problems. So should we orient you back to the oil spill that happened and then the map at the bottom? So you have an oil spill that goes all the way till the Bay of Bengal. So this happened because we are lenient at our policies. When the EIA has happened, there's been a hue and cry about the fact that these people do not have a mitigation plan for accidents. But who approved it? Now the problem lies there. So threat number one, lenient policies. Now let's look at a case from Bengaluru. So how the map that you see is how the growth of Bengaluru happened. The innermost circle is from the 1537, and on the right hand side most you can see two maps as to how the urban sprawl happened. Clearly, we have been having population surveys of humans from a very, very long time, and we have prediction models, but we did not plan ahead to such a land use change that has happened. That will happen. I mean, it's not difficult, but let's say that you're ahead now and you're thinking 50 years ahead of you. It helps in terms of planning the city a little better. So the lakes which were about thousands before has reduced to 200 and odd, and most of them are polluted and there are small little fragments, but each of these fragments have wetland species, birds in them, and all the aquatic species, but we haven't been able to protect them. So the threat number two is because of haphazard city planning. Now let's look at another case, which is, you know what linear infrastructures are. So you have a forest patch and things cut through it. Like if it's a continuous forest patch, a road cuts through it, or they set up a windmill and it's cut through it. So in that cases, you have a lot of road kills. Now 3,500 deaths in 1 year is a lot. Secondly, there are also canopy dwellers. So you have macaques, you have lion-tailed macaques, you have bull or gibbons, which only use a canopy to cross, like they don't come on the ground to cross. So we are not considering that, and this has happened. So what is the solution to it? We can have a underpass or an overpass, right? So this is an overpass example from New Zealand. Now it's easy to adopt it because we have a solution to it. But let's look at, we have done underpasses. So the first picture shows that of a tiger in a kana bench. So kana bench is somewhere here, and I think you can see the cursor. So kana bench is somewhere here, and that national highway is NH44, and they've spent about 300 crores to set up 5 underpasses only. And our annual budget for environment varies between 2000 to 4000 crores. So if we really have so many highways, how do we do it? So the third threat is not, now all these threats that we've discussed so far are policy level threats. So we're going to go top down. So this is because of insufficient priority from the policy heads. So whether the budget that we have is enough for what we're looking for or what we are taking forward to, whether we have that sufficient budget, or if we don't have that budget, what are we going to do with it, or do we have alternate means to keep it? Let's take the case of what we have done in case of protected areas. So you are aware that India we have inviolate species for keeping biodiversity. So we have designated protected areas. Either it can be conservation reserve, or it can be a national park, it can be a tiger reserve. So what did we do? So we pulled out people from those areas, saying that these are inviolate spaces meant only for wildlife. Fair enough. So we pulled out about 200, I think the statistics say about 13,000 and odd families. Now assuming each family will have at least 2 members, the amount is almost doubled from in a span of just 10-20 years. And India claims that it has pulled 271 million people out of poverty. Now, poverty eradication is equally important to us as much as biodiversity conservation is for us. Okay, so that balance is fair, and we will assume that people who are inside the tribal community, despite the fact that they have a folklore, they are happy outside. Now, assuming that, still so far it's good, but what we are doing today is to convert them back into private lands. So when I mean these private lands are degraded forests that are been declared as okay, these are not useful for anything. Now the central government today has said, let's take these wastelands and give it off to the corporate sector. Now the corporate sector can do anything with it in terms of timber production or anything. So are we really doing justice to what we have done a couple of years ago? Are we really thinking ahead and doing things is another threat. So the fourth one, we don't have sustainability plans. We are not involving community engagement as much as we should be, and not being considerate enough. Now coming to wildlife poaching. Now I think Ashutosh raised a question, no, Kisan raised a question yesterday about how poaching is, how do you, right? So so in this case, the statistics about 1,200 and odd cases in 2 years' time. So that's a lot of animals to forego. And during lockdown, things have been worse. So this thing is not just an international issue, because this happens even within India. People consume, but there is a statement that says that, like let's say the tribal community also feed on meat. So is that sustainable enough? We don't know. So that is a question to ask. And whether this, even if illegal poaching happens, considering illegal poaching is happening, but is that taking too much of wildlife than what sustainable poaching is taking? So should we really be focusing on the illegal poaching part of it, because it's a greed more than a need, like how Raksha said yesterday. So this is because enforcement, like all of these are happening under the noses of the people, of the frontline people. And also we can't justify it because these people do not have alternate livelihood options. So what other means do you have? Similar, like just with an example of a lockdown. So lockdown is an economic crisis for a lot of people. It has been, and your wildlife poaching cases has increased from 23 to 88 in just 2 months. So it's a clear indication that they need to be addressed in terms of how much community needs something and whether we are really giving that equality to them. And let's talk about international affairs. Okay, so this is a very contradictory issue because I'll tell you, the first part gives you the map of how much of climate change has an impact on the national economy. The redder it is, the red ones are the ones that are highly impacted. So clearly the ones in the south, the Africa, India, Australia, South America are the ones that are spending more on the on mitigating climate change. But who's the one who's actually producing it? So let's look at the right side example. So you have North America, you have Asia. So these two continents are producing more, but we are facing the brunt of what they produce. So the pollution levels that they create, we are the ones who are going to have it. But we do not have that economic strength to mitigate it because of climate change, our economy has been predicted to be 25% lower than what it would be without climate change. And next, we're going to look at what happens on the coast. So this, I call it the poor science threat. So the coast the coast has a lot of sand, and people were afraid of soil erosion on the sands. But this does not have a scientific basis to why they want to eradicate soil erosion. So what they did do, the second picture that you see is of the grasslands. So this is how a typical coastal dune looks like, and the center picture is a spinifex. So that is an important vegetation there, like a native vegetation there. Now when the grasslands were cleared off and they planted what is called the casuarina or the silver oak. So that is on the top. So these plantations were laid at least about 5 lakh hectares along east coast and the west coast. Now what did these do? Because since they were planted, the nesting grounds were reduced. Now what sort of nesting used to happen was for the sea turtles, which is down. You can see the hatchlings there. So we lost a habitat because we believed in poor science, or because we wanted different management that is not apt for something, and we are not being lenient in the desert systems as well. So in the sand dunes of Rajasthan, you still see acacia tortoise being planted, and the government still has plantation or afforestation processes. Now this has happened even in the grasslands. So what a grassland look like is the picture that you see here, and the one on top is one from the Gujarat, and the one at the bottom is one from Rajasthan. So that the Gujarat one is when it's winter, and the summer one is of the Rajasthan. So you see how a Rajasthan grassland in summer looks like a wasteland. So for so many years, I don't know if it's thousands of years, so many years, these grasslands were considered as wastelands. So they only looked at green cover, they only looked at forest cover. So forest cover is measured in terms of trees. So the more trees that we have, the better they are. So for this sake, we have foregone most of the grasslands that we have had. So you remember the map that Raksha shared yesterday, where it says when you come down through the latitude at the equator, you will find higher biodiversity, right? So when the biodiversity is higher, you find more trees. So does that mean that we shouldn't focus on the areas that are drier or the polar regions which are fairly species poor? Because you find more species at the equator and you find lesser species at the far away from the equator. Now, conservation has been for so long has been at the equator because we believe trees are more important. Now, this is a misconception. And in that case, to give you an example, in Karnataka alone, 4,000 hectares has been given to campuses because these grasslands were considered as wastelands, so people didn't care. And we lost about 20 million hectares of grasslands between 1880 to 2010. So that is because poor science. Then to give you another current example, so you see the river map of India. Now, very strangely, you know that species are endemic to certain areas. So Brahmaputra will have a northeastern, very different species which are different from what you will find in the south, right? So, but back then, management came up with a plan, the government, that we will, since in some areas we have flood. So in Brahmaputra, it's a lot of water and it always floods during, you'll always see rhinos dying, you'll see hog deers dying because there are floods and those floods are natural to Brahmaputra. But then there are drought areas. So drought areas, you have Rajasthan and then you have some parts of central Maharashtra where you don't find so much of water. Okay, so the government came with a plan that what we will do, we will try and deviate the amount of water that is flooding, the excess water, so to say, to a deficit area. It sounds fair enough, but what are they doing is when they do transport, the species that are found in Brahmaputra, right here, are going to travel all the way till Godavari or Krishna, right? So what are we doing? We are mixing two different communities together. Now, this is stemming because there is a clear lack between our science and our application. So our science community, what they have thought of, and our management community are completely different. Now this communication between the two has created a lot of ruckus in the ecosystem that we have today. So what they have already completed is this part. So Godavari Krishna is already linked. Now when you see closer to Mahananda, which is here, there used to be a hill long ago. So when they say this hill used to separate the northeastern species from the southern species because there was no river connectivity of the hill. Now we are connecting through other means, claiming to do something good, but it's not turning out to be that good. And so another conventional thought. So we all know we have protected areas. You have Bandipur, you have Nagarhole, and most of these protected areas used to have cattle grazing in them. Now we were a little concerned with cattle grazing because when cattle grazers go in, they want to increase productivity for their cattle because they have a lot of cattle and they are little poor. So what do? They light fire. So when they light fire, the productivity increases. Means the grass will tend to grow faster. So then what happens? So this will tend to have a forest fire. So some trees, let's say grasses are all burnt. Now some trees will have a very strong bark and they are fire tolerant trees. Now in the areas where you don't find fire tolerant trees, it's prone to forest fire. So we went ahead, we removed all the people who used to cattle graze. Now what is the problem there is today's forest department management who are there, they are creating fires because so when let's say you have a grassland, you have a forest. Now there is a system in between the grasslands and the forest which is called the savanna. So this is a mixture of, you will find trees and grasses together and they are mediated in their own ways. So these three systems are completely different from each other. Okay, so to maintain a savanna you need fire because only then will the fire happens and the tree seedling that are there will be stopped from growing. So the grasses can come back. Now when they created fires, they also led to forest fire. Now whether how we manage fire, or then they brought out control burning. Now what is control burning? Because they need to create savannas, they did control patches. So they'll burn it in some places so that the grass comes back there and then they burn it again later so the grass comes back there. So the grass and the tree, both of them together exist. So this happened, but we do not have a scientific basis to how much fire to put, what is the frequency of fire that we need to have to maintain a savanna. Like if you light up a fire in a Gujarat savanna, it's going to be different because it's dry. And if you light up a fire in a wet savanna, which is Bandipur, because Bandipur you have more rainfall than Gujarat, right? So in here the system will be very different. And these are all practices that have been, literature says about 40,000 years ago, they started fire. But today we still do not have a scientific backing to what these fires have to do or what we have to do in terms of that. So we really have to work on breaking that misconception. So then you have conflict based, which I think somebody will be talking tomorrow on that as well in a little more detail. So to give you a gist, we're going to look at reintroductions and translocations. I don't know how many of you have heard BBMP Forest Cell has removed snakes to translocate them. Instead of saying remove, we would rather say helping people to sort of humanly evict those snakes or reptiles from that place, because snake bites are a little problem. They are about 1.2 million people die from snake bites. So it is a little scary for people to keep snakes in their houses, obviously. You find them inside cupboards out of the blue. So obviously that team is important. Now where does our science come into play? When you remove the snakes, do you know how far do you have to translocate them to? Because the man here, he studied about how when you remove a snake and translocate it, so the snakes are in a new territory. They tend to either roam around too much and lose energy because they don't know their territory, or they try to come back. So in USA, a study said male snakes, when they are released because of translocation and they are taken from a house and released somewhere, so they traveled all the way back to their houses or to their home ranges to stay. So this is a little concerning, because there are two reasons. One, you're going to lose the species, to lose the individuals that you translocate, either due to energy loss or starvation or because of stress. And secondly, because you're leaving this area empty, what is the guarantee that the another snake which finds this area empty is going to come back? So are we really prepared for that? So we need to respond instead of reacting. So that is threat number 11. So we need to have plans or ecological backup to say what sort of mitigation measures do we really need to do. What happens when snakes are there? Why are snakes are there? In Bangalore, you see there are so many cities, but still so many houses. Sorry, but still so many wildlife living together. Now, how do we really plan ahead to look at what land use, land change are we expecting, and what sort of plan do we have to do so that both of them can coexist, if at all we want us to coexist. And then you have the fragmentation. So this is what I was talking about, the linear infrastructure. So you have a forest patch and things cut through it like almost 4 kilometers. So if you don't find a median on a bike, then it's a little annoying because you'll have to go back and forth. But for them, for 200, so many odd kilometers, they don't have connectivity. And for canopy dwelling species like the hulock gibbon, which is down, which you find in Assam, and you have the squirrel, which you find in Kerala. So for these two species, canopy connectivity is very important. Now, whether this also reflects on the genetic diversity of them. So if you look at this picture, it is bisected or rather trisected into 3 parts. So whether these two connections happen, and if these two connections happen, then the individuals are prone to roadkills. If you do underpasses, then you will have species like squirrels who are not able to so their genetic isolation will happen. And this is because when we fragment it, we didn't think about the species that are living. So it could be either because of negligence, because we don't care, because they're too small and we only focus on tigers and elephants, or because we are ignorant, because we don't know that they are there and we are not planning for them. So, and this is another, this I'm sure must have seen, also found in Bangalore, everywhere. So this is lantana. So this is an invasive species. Now, this came into India about 1800s, and we have seen this in cities a long time ago. But we waited until, so if you look at the map below, so the red patches that you see are the places where lantana camaraca invasion is expected to be there, and most of it is already there. So this is currently at the state of 40%. So 40% of the forested areas which are protected have an antenna camera in them. So this happened because we do not have a monitoring system, or we are not prepared. So the forest department has forest guards in them, and the antenna has been observed. So translating that knowledge to science and then finding a solution and coming back to management is a lot of time. So when we have to speed up our ecological understanding of the species and sort of maintain that harmony between science communities and the applied conservationists. So those are the 13 threads that I wanted to share. So what do we do now? So it's a little complex. Okay, so you have a lot of taxa, like for plants you have so many thousands, microorganisms so many thousands, phytoplanktons are there, then you have marine systems. So you have so many taxa, and you want to have a plan which encompasses all of them plus your communities, plus your when I mean communities, your local communities or tribes or any rural or urban dwelling people. So how are we basing our protection measures? So the government by means has three major code books, so to say, by which they look at how to plan ahead for in terms of having a biodiversity action plan. So all those threats that are listed above are included in at least one of these three. The first one is the National Biodiversity Action Plan that the Government of India has. So they have included everything. The second one that we have is the IG targets. This is an international treaty. So the multiple climate change goals are there, sustainable goals are there, and sustainable goals are in terms of also including eradication of poverty and how to bring in industrial revolution in terms of eco-friendly measures. So, but we as science communities, when we look at these three documents, what we have to ponder about is if are we really thinking in the right directions? Will this take us to where we want us to? Because clearly misconceptions, there have been so many threats and we have been misled. Sometimes there have been success stories as well. So we need to be really careful in terms of planning ahead. So at least 20, 30 times, 20, 30 years ahead, what you're saying true today, will it hold true then, is something very important to keep in mind. And if we have the resources that we need, because today we have a population in Bangalore, and in 20 years is going to increase. And whether we are really prepared for that. So the little pockets of urban biodiversity that you have, so are we going to lose them, or should we manage them better, is something that we need to look at. Now, while we also look at that, then another thing to keep in mind is we have till now adopted the first approach. In most cases, this is a legal approach. So we have protected areas and we consider them inviolate. So we remove people and we have made sure that wildlife only remains there. So now this approach seems to have a problem because the protected areas at the corners have a lot of conflict around them, and there is no connectivity between two protected areas. So technically, larger home range animals tend to move between each other, and there is no way that we're going to mitigate. There are ways, but then it's going to be very difficult to mitigate conflict in the patches that are at the center of the protected areas. So this is today's concept, which is a preservationist concept, and what we are planning to do in terms of improving or enhancing what we already have is what going into a conservationist concept, which you see in the right side picture. So in a conservationist concept, now this is a very ideal scenario, so we need to be really careful whether this is going to work for us or not. So instead of having protected areas as separate entities and within intermixed with urban pockets, Now, do we really look at something that is more integrated? So you have communities, you have wildlife which are living together, but in terms of usage, so human a local community can use habitats of both, and we also allow animals to pass through them. Now there are pros and cons of both of these approaches. So the first one, for the protected area approach, so we have problems with connectivity, and we don't know whether that is going to affect the genetic community, or is it because or the we will lose some populations as well, so that we don't know. And but if we stick to the first approach, then the Hubli Ankola railways that tend to sort of cut through this should not happen. Then we stick to a preservationist concept, right? But in the second case, which is a conservationist concept, which is a little more integrated. Now, when both of them tend to interact with each other, then what happens is, so we have to be ready for conflict mitigation, because conflict is prone to happen when you increase the amount of space at which both of them are going to interact. And second, we'll have to look at whether, when the forest resources are open to people, then do we really over exploitation of that? And and how do we really draw boundaries to what you want to preserve? Now let's take the case of Bangalore again. So how do you say this much of area I want to protect, or I'll go and survey this much area and find out so many species. So do you really want to have a species centric approach, or do you want to look at a community? Because then you have a lot more interactions between the species, and is it really sufficient to conserve both of them? So with that, uh, I'm going to leave it out to you to say, if we don't do it now, then when do we really do it? So that's all I had for today.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving an informative talk on threats and measures to protect biodiversity. Now we will take up with questions from the participants. I request Dr. Santosh to take over the moderation.
Thank you. Right. So people who have questions can unmute themselves and ask the presenter your questions, or you can type them up in the chat box, and I will convey them to the presenter. Just give it a few minutes if people are typing up questions. Those of you who do have questions, please unmute yourself and ask your questions, please. Well, okay, looks like there's no questions coming in.
Or else, sir, shall we take it up together after the second press round? So probably they will have questions piled up at the end then.
Yes.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, that'll
We
be
do
good.
that. Yes. Thank you, sir. Okay,
Thank you.
Chandana, whoever is to take over next.
Okay, so our second topic for today, the Indian Wildlife Act Protecting Biodiversity by Legislation by Ms. Anukriti Shaw. She is currently pursuing her Masters in Conservation and Action from Bharatiya Vidyapeeth Institute of Environmental Research. She has completed her bachelor's in St. Joseph's College 2019. She is an amateur birder. Her interest lies in conflict management involved in human-wildlife interaction and conservation with the help of indigenous communities living in and around the forest. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. I need to be able to share my slides, so I think Aranya has to stop sharing her slide. Just give me a. I cannot share this slide as, and okay, yeah, got it. Okay, I hope my slide is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it visible now?
Yes, yes, we can see it.
It's in the presentation mode, so I hope it's visible. Okay, so my topic for today is the Indian Wildlife Act, which is by preserving the biodiversity by legislation. So I will be focusing on these topics: the history of Wildlife Act over the years, significance, of God like cows,